Go up now that we are live. Give everyone a second to get all logged in here so they can hear us. Welcome, everybody. We'll take just a minute to get started. All righty. Okay, well, welcome, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So let's see here. So welcome to Hawk Mountain Sanctuary's Black Birders Week Spotlight program. Today's program is In the Field and Behind the Lens with David Greaves and Darren Cook. Hi, David. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. And Darren, nice to see you.
Good to see you as well.
My name is Riley Davenport. I'm an educator and raptor specialist at Hawk Mountain Sanctuary, and we are so glad that you are all joining us today. Hawk Mountain Sanctuary is the world's very first refuge for birds of prey. We continue to work to be leaders in raptor conservation, science, and education locally and globally around the world. Hawk Mountain Sanctuary is a private nonprofit, and membership is the lifeblood of our organization. And to all of our members, thank you so much for your continued support. And if you are joining us today and you're not a member, we hope that you consider becoming one in the future. Hawk Mountain hopes that everyone has remained healthy and safe during these times of COVID challenges. And we are excited to offer our local and global community a variety of free virtual programming like this. So as always, Hawk Mountain always welcomes and greatly appreciates donations. And if at any time during today's program, if you check down at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button. Feel free to click that if you have any questions for Darren or David, and we will answer them at the end of the program. And also just a friendly reminder that this video is being recorded for our YouTube channel. So in a few days, feel free to go head to Hawk Mountain Sanctuary on YouTube, and you can watch this video again and again and again. We already have a video that we uploaded last week where Hawk Mountain board members, Dr. Gillian Bowser and Scott Weidensaul met with Dr. Drew Lanham for a discussion about Black Birders Week. So be sure to check that out. And we are so excited that David and Darren are joining us today to share their experiences in the field as nature photographers, one from the East Coast, one from the West Coast. So it'll be cool to hear some different stories. And before we get started, I'd like to share a little bit of Darren and David's background experience with you. And here we go. So David was born in Washington, D.C. and grew up in Prince George's County, Maryland, where his love for the environment and wildlife was fostered. David used his photography to encourage people of color of all ages to explore the natural world around him. He created the brand Nature Under Your Nose as a way to introduce his target audience to the beauty of nature that they can find locally where they live and abroad. And a nature lover since he can remember, Darren was born in Fort Dix, New Jersey in 1968. Being a son of a military officer, he was exposed to many cultures and countries while growing up. Later in life, Darren was involved professionally in acting and art. And after starting a successful business in the wine industry, he has now found time to turn his focus back to the wildlife that he loves. His nature photography has been published in online science journals, and he recently published his first wildlife calendar entitled Wildlife of the West, and a book is in the works for 2022. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I have a few questions for David and Darren. We'll kind of do like a little Q&A style. And for people who are just joining us now, if at any time you would like to ask a question, head down to the bottom of your Zoom screen. There's a Q&A option for the webinar. And you can ask us any questions you have, and we will answer them at the end of the program. Okay, so my first question for you both, and feel free to jump in, whoever would like to go first. So my first question is, can you recall your most formative moments growing up that started your passion for photographing wildlife?
I'll go first. For me, just growing up in Maryland in the 80s and 90s, during that time, there wasn't any iPads, there's no tablets, iPhones, internet, all that stuff. So really, what we had was the outdoors. Growing up, my dad used to take us to the library a lot, and I would go get animal encyclopedias. I would get the Birds of North America books, Whales of North America books, all Mammals of North America. All of that stuff is what I would read as a child. And then we just spent a lot of time outside. Where I grew up in Maryland, the neighborhood kids, we go into the woods exploring, looking for frogs and turtles and hunting, so to speak, to see what we can find. I had mostly any pet you can think of. I drove my mom crazy bringing frogs and salamanders in the house and turtles and all that good stuff. So it's just been a part of my life since I can remember. And my parents are actually from the island of Barbados in the Caribbean. And my grandfather was a farmer and a carpenter, and he lived in the hills in the island. So when we would go visit my grandmother during the summers, she had chickens. They had, I think, a donkey at one point, and dogs, and not to mention the lizards and some of the natural wildlife that were occurring on the island. And every once in a while, I get a glimpse of a green monkey, which is imported to the island, but indigenous there now. And those are the things I would look for when I would go visit, my grandparents. And then on my mom's side, I had a favorite uncle that lived by the beach. So he'd take us out, and my older brother and older sister and myself, and we go to the beach and we go snorkeling and see what fish we can see in the water, in the ocean, and look at the rocks for snails and hermit crabs. And I remember my uncle used to catch, it's a crustacean called a sea egg. It looks like a sea urchin, but it doesn't have as sharp spines. And he would pull it out of the water and let me look at it, and I touch it and things like that. So I just have a lot of memories of just being outside with family and friends growing up. So that's where this started for me.
Very nice. Darren, what about you?
Yeah, listen, my story is very similar to David's. It probably happened about 20 years earlier. He was talking about not having iPads or phones, like we were still on rotary phones back when I was a kid. But yeah, just a very similar thing. When we stopped traveling and my dad retired from the military after being in there for 22 years, he retired at Fort Ord in California. And we had a house in Monterey, and I used to spend my formative years with my brothers just adventuring, every day, especially during the summers. We'd wake up early, leave the house at 7, and we wouldn't get home until dark. And if we didn't get home just before dark, there was trouble. But that was, those were the days when your parents would let you leave all day and explore. And it was a similar thing. We didn't have much to do other than that. And I remember, specifically seeing things that really captivated me and grabbed my imagination. I remember one day we were adventuring and we climbed underneath this big oak tree, and the oak tree was so huge that the branches were hanging all the way down like a big mushroom. And we went underneath it and looked up, and a big barn owl flew down right over my head, and his feathers touched the top of my head as he flew out. And I was probably 5 or 6 years old, but that was one of those things where you never forget that, right? As a nature lover, that was one of my first moments that stuck in my brain, and I thought how amazing that instance was, that experience was. And I remember my dad took us to Yosemite when I was 6, and my mom wanted to put her feet in the river, and we sat down next to the river, and there was a giant redwood tree, and at the base of the redwood tree around the roots was a California mountain king snake. And if you've ever seen one, they're red and black and white striped with rings around them, and they look like a rainbow, right? It's an amazing, beautiful creature. My dad caught it and let me hold it, and I remember holding it in my hands and just thinking how amazing it was. And it's just I think those of us that were fortunate to be in those rural areas or areas where you were near nature, I think it grabs you. And if it doesn't, then I don't know what you're looking at. So that was same for me. Childhood. It's great.
Awesome. Those are some awesome stories from your childhood. That's really cool. So from those experiences, what inspired you both to turn that into specifically photography and capturing those moments?
For me, I have a background outside of my main background is biology. I'm a biologist, and I work for the Environmental Protection Agency as my 9 to 5. But I always had an interest in multimedia and the arts and things like that. And I used to do a lot of freelance videography some years ago, weddings and events and things like that. But as you know, in that field, you deal with people, and people don't want to pay you what the work is worth, or they want to nickel and dime you. So I kind of got tired of that. And, one day I went to a local wildlife refuge in Philly called John Hines. And I just took my video camera, took my tripod, and I went on this area where there's a bridge over a wetland. I set my tripod up, and I just started filming egrets and herons. And I just felt like a release. I was like, man, this is a lot better than doing weddings and editing for 40 hours after the fact, So that's where it kind of started for me. It was a thing of, I've always been into animals, always loved nature, but that experience kind of looped me back around to where I could connect this technical skill that I had to a passion of mine that I kind of, I wouldn't say let go, but just kind of rediscovered at that point in my life. So from then on, I started out filming wildlife and doing little montages of the nature that I saw at different parks and things like that. And it wasn't until I got to work, and I had a coworker who I think he's on now, but he was a photographer, and he told me, he's like, you got to try doing stills. The video thing is cool and everything, but try still photography. And at the time I had a DSLR. So I said, you know what, I'm going to, to get him to stop nagging me, I'm going to take this camera out one weekend, and I'm going to go to the park and just do stills. That's all I'm going to do. And I fell in love with it. The mobility I had with the DSLR, not having to lug around a tripod all of the time, and instantly being able to see what I just shot was amazing to me. And then also when I started printing out some of my photos at the local Walgreens or whatever, and I was like, man, I took that. And then I started sharing it with others, and other people started enjoying what I was doing too at work, and some of my close friends and family. So that made me want to keep pursuing it further, and then just wanting to expose people to some of the animals and things that I was taking pictures of. So that's where it started for me.
That's great, David. That's cool. Yeah, I'm more of a newbie to it. We were talking before we went on about the silver linings with COVID. I think you have to take silver linings from everything, even tragic events. And for me, my business in the wine industry really took a hit when COVID started. And I wasn't able to go out and visit the wineries anymore because they weren't open. So it was a big struggle. And only weeks before, I had picked up a camera for the first time and started taking a few pictures. And I realized that was something that brought me back to my childhood. So, when I was little, I used to come back and tell stories about the animals that I saw. But I found that with a camera, I could continue to tell those stories, but I had a visual as well to go along with the story. And I started spending day after day after day out in the wilderness, and my wife didn't know what happened to me. But it was, it was one of those things where it was magic again. It came back. I felt like a little kid again. And, because I had grown up with animals, I kind of knew habitat and where animals lived. So that part of it was fairly easy for me. I was also an artist, so I kind of had an idea of composition and what looked good. So I think I had a little bit of a head start, and I just had to figure out my camera. Like, what is this DSLR thing? What are all these buttons? Like, what makes this thing work, right? And once I figured that out, the photography part of it kind of came naturally. And yeah, so it's been 18 months, but I'm happy with where I am as far as my progress in that amount of time as a photographer. But I always, you can always get better and improve. So every time I go out, I'm still working on that, try to get better.
Very cool. Thank you both. So I'm gonna give you the opportunity now David, if you want to go ahead and share your screen. I have a couple questions about your photography, and I'd love to be able to see some shots from both of you. Maybe if you want to talk about your favorite places to shoot, photos that you're most proud of, favorite moments from the field, or maybe experiences that didn't go as planned. So I'll give you the floor to talk about some of your shots.
All right, so this is David and Darren's top 5 Raptor photographs. You know, Hawk Mountain, you guys are about the Raptors, so we decided to, focus on those particular types of birds. So these are a few of my shots. Bald eagle on the left and the red-shouldered hawk on the right. The bald eagle, for me, I've always had an interest in bald eagles. You see them everywhere in terms of, all of the patriotic visuals you would see over the years growing up in history books and things like that. When I was a kid, I used to like to go to the arcade, so the bald eagle was on the quarter. So I was very, I had an interest in bald eagles. So being able to see one for the first time, maybe I think it was maybe like 6 years ago at this state park in Maryland, it just blew my mind about their size. And, I've never seen a bald eagle look happy. They always have this stern look on their faces all the time. And for me, it was just being able to photograph something that I saw as a child. So this particular picture here, actually took when I was floating in my kayak on the Chesapeake Bay. And this eagle, there was maybe 4 or 5 of them in the tree. And this one decided to stay and let me take photos of it. I took, I don't know, maybe like 100+ photos of this one eagle because he stayed. And a lot of times with me, if I'm shooting and there's a subject that's staying there for me, I'm going to waste that memory card on that particular photo because I don't know when I'm going to get it that good again. On the right side, we have a red-shouldered hawk, which I actually took in Darren's neck of the woods. I was in San Francisco for work for a week, and I went down a couple of days early so I can explore. I had never been to the West Coast before. This was back in 2018. And I actually had gotten lost. I was in Golden Gate State Park and I got lost, and I sat down and happened to look up, and the hawk was sitting right there just looking around. I was like, oh, okay. And I just, I took the shot and it came out beautifully. This is one of my favorite shots of a red-shouldered hawk.
That's beautiful. That's a great picture.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites of of all the time. So on the left on this shot, we have a Merlin falcon, and I got this shot. I was in New Jersey at, I think this called Edwin B. Forsyth Wildlife Refuge. I really wasn't doing that well that day. I wasn't seeing anything, and everybody that I know that takes photos there, they come back with these amazing shots, and I wasn't getting anything that day. So I was on my way out, and this Merlin decided to hop on this area is closed sign and just sat there. I pulled the truck over, I snuck around the back and zoomed in on him, and he just hung out. And again, I wasted, I don't know, like a whole memory card on this Merlin, because when am I going to get a shot that close of a Merlin sitting on the sign? The next shot is an osprey, and there's a state park that I go to that's on the Chesapeake, and they have an osprey nest there, and they come back every summer. They're there, and again, if I want ospreys, I know I need to go to Elk Neck State Park because that's where they're going to be. I like the shot because it just kind of shows the epicness of them landing in their nest, and you see those claws and what they use to grab the fish with when they pull them out of the water. It just kind of spoke to me. That's why I put the shot here. And my final shot is a barred owl. This is one of the times where it's just luck. I was actually in the park with my girlfriend, and we were walking on our way out, and we actually got lost. And I happened to see like a feather of the owl like flicking in the back of the tree. And I was like, a leaf doesn't move like that. That's not a leaf. What is that? So I kind of turned the corner, and this barred owl was sitting on the branch and just waking up from a nap. You can see his eyes are half open. The sun is kind of in his face. And he let me get relatively close, or close enough that me zooming in would give me this clear of a shot. And it's just one of my favorite shots because you can see the pattern and the feathers. The lighting is just perfect on his face. It's just one of my favorite shots, and I love the barred owl call. Growing up in Maryland around my parents' house, I would hear them all the time, but I never would see them. So now I'm able to, find them and get photos of them. So this is one of my favorite shots.
It's beautiful. That's a great picture.
Right, now going to Darren. So you could talk about these, Darren, and let me know when you want me to go to the next slide.
Yeah, so the picture on my left is an American kestrel, one of my favorite little falcons. We used to call them sparrowhawks when I was little. And I know that in England, they call a Cooper's hawk a sparrowhawk. So interesting fact. But these guys are just amazing, right? They're one of those birds that you see a lot of times on the side of the road, on a pole, or on a power line, and they hover in the air and drop down on their prey, which for their size is usually like an insect, a grasshopper, or a tiny mouse, but they're very fierce, even for their size. This little guy was in an area called the Yolo Wildlife Refuge, and it's near Sacramento. And it was a really cold winter day, and it was raining, and I didn't see anything. Like David said, it was one of those days where you've been out for hours, and it was a very unsuccessful day, and I was a little bit depressed, and I saw this little guy sitting on this little stick, and I got close, and usually they don't let you get too close, but he was too cold and too wet and too miserable to go anywhere. So we were kind of both in the same boat, and that's why this picture is so great to me. It's that memory of this cold winter day and this little guy all fluffed up, trying to stay warm, and me pulling up and him seeing me and just going, you know what, fine, take your pictures, I'm good. So I love that picture. I love those little birds, they're great. The picture on my right is, of course, a barn owl. I love owls, right? We all love owls. How can you not love owls? This I just took this past weekend, and I was on a trip down to Paso Robles, which is on the central coast of California. There's a lot of wineries down there. I have a few customers there. It was my wife's birthday. So we went down for a drive, and it's about 5 hours from where we live. So we stayed overnight. And in the morning we woke up and we were driving out towards the wineries, and I saw a barn over on my right side. And I turned to her and I said, how much you want to bet there's a barn owl in there? And she laughed, and I pulled over, and as we pulled up to the barn, we could see the front of the barn, but we couldn't see really inside too well. But we both looked up and we saw this beam, and we could see his feet sitting on the beam. So I hopped out of the car, and I took this picture, and it was just a really fun moment. And that's one of my favorite birds. I absolutely love that bird. So that was the story on that.
All right.
Again on the left, another one of my favorite birds, a peregrine falcon. When I was little, I loved things that went fast, and nothing faster, right? 200 miles an hour or more. I hadn't seen one of these birds with my own eyes until I was like in my late 20s. And the one that I saw just zoomed past me. And then it wasn't until maybe last year that I had seen a few more birds. There are some peregrines that nest at a hospital in downtown Sacramento. They live up in the top of the 4-story hospital. And I went there trying to find the birds, and I found them, and I took a few pictures, but they were a little too far away. And I found this guy out at YOLO as well. He's a younger peregrine, and he was sitting out on a dirt field that had been plowed, and there are a lot of ducks and things out there. So he was, I think, just learning to hunt. I got within about 100 yards of him, and I decided to lay down in the dirt field, and I lay down in the mud, and it was pretty gross and disgusting and uncomfortable. But I waited for about an hour, and he flew towards me, and he landed even closer. And then he just sat and stared at me for the longest time, trying to figure out what I was and what I was doing. He heard the clicks of my camera, and he was really curious. And then he he just launched himself past me, and I just snapped this photo. I had it on a pretty high speed, so I was able to capture the image pretty clearly, but it's one of my favorite images of a peregrine falcon racing by. So that was pretty cool. The guy on the right, obviously a great horned owl. This guy was out at Point Reyes, and Point Reyes is a national seashore, national park that's about 2.5 hours from where I live. Amazing wildlife. I never really realized it. A lot of people knew that I liked wildlife, and they kept saying, why haven't you been to Point Reyes? And I thought, there's nothing out there but just the beach. I didn't think there was really anything there. But it turns out that there are coyotes and bobcats and badgers and great horned owls, and the diversity of the wildlife is just amazing. So I captured this guy one afternoon just as it was getting dark. And I just really like that dark green background, and then the contrast of his golden yellow eyes and sort of that half eyes open kind of look. The moss hanging off the log. That's got a lot of great texture to it, that photograph.
That's definitely one of my favorites of yours too. And there's so much personality in that shot. He looks very I don't know if I'm gonna say irritated, just kind of like
a little grumpy.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little grumpy.
That's definitely one of my favorites of yours though. I still haven't gotten mine yet. I'm working on it though.
You'll get it. You gotta come visit me. You'll see.
Absolutely.
Is there one more? Is that it?
Yeah, there's one more.
Okay. Yes. This was an amazing moment. I was out again at YOLO, and this Northern Harrier, I actually was driving on a gravel road, and I saw a dead duck laying in the road. And I thought, that looks like it just died. There was blood everywhere. It was really gross. And I thought, did somebody hit that duck with their car? And I thought, nah, that doesn't sound right. And then I looked a little close, and there were feathers everywhere. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, somebody was having a meal, and I obviously interrupted, right? So I thought, you know what? I'll just back up my car, and I'll pop out my little hide. I have this little portable hide that sometimes I use if I don't want to be seen. And Harriers, these guys are notoriously shy. It was taking me forever to try to get a close-up picture of one of them. And I popped out the hide, I pulled my car back around, and I just sat in it. And I was there for about a half hour, and nothing happened. And I thought, oh, I'm just gonna close this thing up. And then sure enough, she came by and landed right next to the duck. And she kept looking at the hide, and she didn't quite know what to make of it, but she knew it was there. And she started to eat her duck, and I started to click away. And then she looked back up at me, and she gave me one of those things, you know, and she was really trying to figure out what was going on. And I wanted to be as quiet as I could because I didn't want to interrupt her meal. But at the same time, I wanted to get the photograph because I had never been that close to one of these birds. And when I got home, I opened up the photographs, and of course, you're hoping that you get that great shot. Mm-hmm. And I opened this up, and I enlarged it, and I saw this little, if you look closely on her chest,
the heart.
She has a little heart, feather shape. And I thought, come on, like that can't be real, right? And I thought, is that some sort of and sure enough, I looked at all the pictures, and it's really right there, and it's perfectly symmetrical. And it's sort of highlighted by lighter feathers around it. Mm-hmm. And it's, you know, she's a lady Harrier, right? Because the males are gray. And I just thought, man, those legs and that little heart, and the way she was looking at me, I was just like, this is amazing, right? So that's one of my favorite pictures ever, just because of that. Like that little tattoo is just like perfect, right? So anyway, that's that. I think, like, you know, David was saying, like, photography, when you're out in the wild, like, they don't cooperate, right? Like, it's not like you were photographing a model and you can say, wait, just pose just like that, or the light's not quite right, can you just, right? You can't do that, right? You have to wait and be patient. And I think that's one of the that's one of the lessons that you learn as you continue to do it, is you have to have an incredible amount of patience if you want to be able to get those shots, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you for letting me share those with you guys.
Yes.
It's great.
Yeah, those are amazing. And I think there's something so special about the photos where they're just looking right into the lens at you.
Yeah.
Those are very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so we do have a couple more questions left, and I do see a few questions coming up in the Q&A, which I'm excited to share. So my first question is, I know you both have been sharing your photos online through social media, and if you could both talk a little bit about that, like what's the most rewarding part of being able to share those images with your community?
Yeah. I think for me, one of the reasons that I started the Nature Under Your Nose brand was to show more representation in the outdoors. When I started doing this back in 2016, I remember I had went to the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. With a friend, and Nat Geo had their wildlife photography contest winners displayed in the museum. And as I was walking through, I was amazed by what I saw. Definitely amazing photographers and amazing content. But when I got to the point where they showed who the photographers were, I didn't see anybody that looked like me or other people of color. So that sparked something in me to, and at the time I didn't, I Googled Black nature photographers. I couldn't find any. So I said, well, if there's none out there, then I'm going to be that for my community so they can see somebody that looks like them that's in this space. So, with Nature Under Your Nose and with the my Instagram page, my goal was to take these photos in local areas where I live. And if I'm traveling, I'm taking photos there. But to get people to see that right in your neighborhood, right in your local parks, right in your local wildlife refuges, wherever you have these beautiful animals that's there for you to see. And I wanted to, show my community that they're there and that there's somebody that looks like them that's exposing you to it. So, if I am out in the woods and I'm taking these photos and I'm getting back home safely, you can do it too. And, in the Black community, there has been, man, I don't even know where to start with this, but in the Black community, there's been some degree of fear of being outside and being in the outdoors and in the woods, and it's historical. And it's not just historical, it's now, we had this situation with Chris Cooper in Central Park and things like that. So it's my goal is to show people that there's this beauty in nature and that you can be out in nature and you can be in nature safely. But that's really my goal with what I'm doing with my work is to show that. And it gets challenging sometimes because you hear stories about people who have gone out and they haven't had the nice experiences that I've had. And I think that's one of your questions you'll touch on later. But the goal of Nature Under Your Nose is to expose people to what's literally under your nose and what you can find locally around where you are, and to have my face as a person of color, a Black man, that I'm out here doing this and it's okay and you should try it too. And that's really what my goal is with my photography.
Good words. Good word. So yeah, very similar to what David said. Through my Instagram, I think I've really been able to tap into something that a lot of people feel about nature. A lot of people have a real love of animals, but they tend not to have the time maybe that I have. They don't have maybe the knowledge about where to look for animals. So first and foremost, I think the more connected we all are to nature and the environment, the better chance we have of saving it. So what I'm trying to do is expose people as much as possible to what's out there. Secondarily, I think, with Black Birders Week, it's incredibly important to show representation, right? And to show particularly younger people that nature belongs to them as much as it belongs to anyone, right? And the more we are out there and the more they see that, I think the less afraid people will be, right? Education is what's really important. And my goal is to connect people to nature through my lens, right? I want my pictures to tell a story, and regardless of ethnicity, social standing, political affiliation, everybody should be welcome in the outdoors, So yeah, I think that, like David said, it's difficult for a lot of people that are maybe either in the inner city or just don't have a background in nature to see what's there and to be able to show them that and to be able to tell them that they have access to it and it's not restricted to a certain color of people or a certain level of social society, right? That it's theirs to share. So that's what I try to do with my pictures.
Very nice. Awesome. So from being online, maybe being able to see some other people working in photography or maybe even with wildlife or in conservation, do you have anyone that you can think of that inspires you to do the work that you do?
Oh man, you heard this guy named Darren Cook. I mean, he's no, seriously. I gotta definitely shout out Darren because I think we got connected. Was it last year sometime? I remember again, when I started doing this, I didn't know there was a community of Black birders or Black nature photographers out there. I kind of felt alone at some point, like I was the only one. And through last year's Black Birders Week and just through those connections I made, like I started to feel less alone and that there were other folks out there. And I remember Darren messaged me. I don't know if it was a direct message or it was like a comment on one of my posts. And he said, that I was a sight for sore eyes. I was like, man, you are too, because you're not alone out here. So, we've been corresponding and, having, friendly competition ever since. And yeah, he's definitely somebody that I look at. There is just a host of folks out there. There's a guy in Alabama that I recently connected with. His name is Chris Joe, and his family owns a farm in Alabama, and they do a lot of nature tours, and he does photography as well. So I like looking at what he's doing. I like the fact that he has the land and he's out there. Exposing people of color and other folks to farming and also to the nature that's out there in Alabama and on his farm. I definitely like looking at his stuff. And I would say there's a guy I met in Philly. His name is Troy Bynum. And we went out, I don't know if it was, the time was just running together. Now, I don't know if it was last year or this year, but we went out to a spot in Philadelphia that he takes photos at. And that's where I got my first shot of an American kestrel out there with him. And my first shot of a coyote. It wasn't a good one, but just hanging out with him and learning from him and, trading secrets and techniques and things like that. I would say those are a few of the people that speak to me. And there's so many others, and some of them I don't know their names by memory or, I just know their Instagram tag name. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at any Black Birders Week content, there's so many of photographers and birders out there that I look at, who I follow, and I enjoy their work just as much as they enjoy mine. So yeah.
Well, right back at you. Like David said, we have sort of a East Coast, West Coast. I wouldn't call it a rivalry, but we try to one up each other. So that's always good to have somebody that, when you log on to Instagram, in the morning, you see, one of his pictures and you think, oh man, like I gotta step my game up, So he's out there. Again, like David said, there's a lot of people on Instagram that I follow that I don't really know by name, but I know their tag names. guy TB Wildlife does some amazing stuff.
Yep.
Carl Jackson does some great stuff. WB photography. This guy is just incredible with some of the images that he shoots. So, you know, it's always fun to see what other people are producing. And, you know, it always inspires you to try to, do a little better every morning. So, you know, whether I get a chance to go out every day or just once a week, yeah, I'm always inspired by other people's work, for sure.
Awesome, very nice. So my next question for you both is, I'll probably go ahead and combine these two questions. So here at Hawk Mountain, we, especially over the last year, because of the pandemic, we've noticed a huge shift in people, and we were talking about this before the webinar started today, you know, so many people wanting to come out and experience the outdoors, sometimes for the very first time in their lives. So we've really seen a big change that way. And I'm wondering if you've noticed a similar shift with people, specifically Black and Indigenous and people of color. Like, have you noticed more people gradually going outdoors and starting to appreciate nature?
Yeah, David, let me speak on that real quick. Because you know, I went to Yellowstone for the first time about a year ago. And I was at Pinnacles National Park in California, and a guy came up next to me. I had my camera out. He drove next to me in his car, rolled the window down. He said, "Have you seen any condors?" I said, "No, I'm looking, but I haven't seen it." He said, "I'm a photographer too." And he held his camera up. I said, "Oh, okay." And COVID had just started, so I was, you know, the distancing thing and everything. And he said, "When was the last time you've been to Yellowstone?" I said, "Oh, I've never been to Yellowstone." I said, "Yellowstone's too far away. That's forever away." He said, "No, you can get there in like 12, 13 hours. I said, "Really? Like in a car?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I wake up at 4 a.m. and I drive all the way to Yellowstone from LA, and I get there at about 6 p.m. And then, you know, I could take my pictures, blah, blah, blah." So I thought, like, wow, I could drive to Yellowstone in a day? So I came home and I asked my wife if she minded if I went to Yellowstone. She was like, "When do you want to go?" I was like, "Tomorrow." She was like, "What? You can't." So sure enough, I got in my car, I drove to Yellowstone, and it was so busy, and I didn't have a reservation. I slept in my car for 4 days. It was the greatest trip I ever took. But the one thing that I noticed was the diversity that was at Yellowstone. I was shocked because I've been going to Yosemite my whole life as a kid, and you don't see many people of color. You just don't see it. And so, you know, I came back like, wow, you know, not only was it crowded and there was tons of people, which I didn't expect during COVID, but yeah, the representation of people of color was greater than I had ever seen at a national park. And I thought that was fabulous. We went back a month later because I took my family because they had to see it, the park. And it was the same thing from them. They said, like, "Wow, there's a brown person." You know, he was like, what's going on? So it was wonderful to see. And when I went back to Yosemite 3 months later, it was the same thing. So I am seeing that. And that's a beautiful thing. Not only with everybody there, right? But more and more people of color. And that's just good for everything.
Yeah.
Right? Sorry, David, go ahead.
No. That's perfectly fine. Yeah, I'll probably say the same thing. I especially through social media, I've been able to see, especially like locally here, we've got a lot of Black hiking groups that's out there now that I think started due to COVID. Black birding groups, Black rock climbers, Black sky, like anything you can think of. I think I've been seeing a lot more of being shown on social media, and I've been quite surprised sometimes going out in the woods myself, where typically I'm either literally the only person out there or the only Black person out there. And there's been a few times where I've been kayaking and I look over and I see a Black family on some boats, and I'm like, you know, "Hey, good to see you," you know, whatever. It does make me happy to see that more people, Black people and other people of color, getting out in the woods. I was pleasantly surprised a couple Fridays ago. There's a place that I go to kayak and local waterway where I go to find beavers. And I went there in the evening time once and I saw a truck out there and where I usually park at. And I was a little upset, like somebody was in my spot. This is my secret area. No one's ever out here. So I was a little salty about that. And but I got in the kayak and I said, I'm gonna run into whoever this is at some point in time. And I was kayaking and I happened to see his paddles going up in the air around the corner. And as soon as I turned the corner, it was a black guy on the kayak fishing. And I said, wait. I never see anybody out here, much less another black man out on this waterway with me at the same time. So we got to talking, we exchanged information. He turned out to be a photographer as well. He was out there fishing, catching snakehead fish, doing the environment of service because they're invasive. But yeah, we got to talking and he's a photographer. And for me, that was just a great thing to see because that's not who I was expecting to see when I pulled around the corner. But yeah, I've definitely been noticing a lot more people of color being outdoors. I drive by the parks. I see a lot more Black families and other families enjoying the outdoors, taking walks and things like that. And I think that's great. I think COVID has taken a lot from us, and I think that people are now discovering the therapeutic benefits of being outside in the sun and listening to birds sing and just sitting in the park and people watching or walking your dog in the park and all that good stuff. So I think it's a good time that like you were mentioning earlier, Darren, about the silver lining, that people are now able to see that nature has therapeutic qualities to it, and that you may have been missing out on it before, but now you're doing it and now you can continue to enjoy it. That's what I've been saying.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, very awesome. It's been amazing too with Black Birders Week. I know we're almost through the end of the week here, but being able to open up the conversation. And my next question for you guys is, what do you recommend to people who, they might not know how to lift up Black birders, photographers, scientists in their community? What would you recommend to people who aren't sure how to go about that?
You can go first, Darren, if you want. I'm marinating a little bit.
That's a tricky question.
Yeah.
Look, I just think it has to do with being anti-racist, right? Like, you got to be welcoming, right? You got to welcome everybody with open arms, and if you're part of a birding club that doesn't have any Black members, reach out online to people, show them that, it's for everyone. It's a difficult thing because I've experienced kind of what David has talked about in nature, right? Where you don't feel welcome and people clutch, their purses, it's just like, you hear the story of walking down the street in the city and somebody walks to the other side of the road because they're afraid of you, right? But we have those same fears, right? As Black people in nature, right? So I just think, it's a matter of being open, honest, welcoming, and, trying to express that in your actions, whatever they may be.
Yeah, I agree. And this to me is such a layered question because, when we walk down the street or we see somebody in the store and we make eye contact. Hey, how you doing? I'm doing well. That goes a long way. The clutching purses or the unwelcoming looks or, well, I don't really know how to engage. I'm a human being. I just happen to be this color, but I'm a human being. Say hello. How you doing? I said, you can ask me just, innocuous questions just to break the ice. It doesn't have to be a big deal, but I just think that I think when some folks feel like they have an ownership of certain spaces, it's either the not knowing how to, or just not the desire to be welcoming to people when you feel like this is your space and this is yours. Um, you know, I've had experience. I've had good experience in the outdoors, and I've had not so good experiences in the outdoors. And I think people, Black people and other people of color, just want to be able to feel safe. If you don't want to talk to people, fine, but don't make people feel unsafe in the outdoors. No one owns it. No one owns the air. No one owns the trees. You don't own the squirrels, the birds, the bee. You don't own any of that. Everybody should be able to enjoy that freely. And if you don't want to talk to people, fine, but don't make people feel unwelcome in a space that's welcoming for everyone. Animals don't care what color we are. They're gonna run from all of us anyway. It's just a natural thing. They don't care. So, I just think that in terms of organizations, I think when you look at things like marketing, like, when you look at your marketing materials, who do you have represented in the marketing materials? If I go open a sports store magazine, am I going to see anybody that looks like me? Or an outdoors magazine, am I going to see anybody that looks like me? Or, a nature center or whatever, like Darren mentioned, who's on your board? Who are you doing business with? And I think it's interesting that, I have a degree in biology and I took ecology class. One of the things that was a huge thing in ecology was biodiversity, diversity. You don't have a healthy ecosystem without diversity, but that gets lost when we take it out of the book and put it into reality. And I think that's an issue that we have to, if it works in the textbooks, it should work in reality. So I think it's just, people just have to get used to the shift that's happening right now. And there's going to be more people of color and more people that don't look like you that's going to be outside. They're just there to enjoy it just like you are. And I think it's just, you just got to be welcoming. It breaks my heart when I hear stories. There's a Black couple in Delaware that I met on Instagram, and they were at a local wildlife refuge, and they saw a group of white birders who were doing, I guess, in a birding event or whatever. And they just started birding because of COVID. They had never done it before, and they just wanted to experience birding, and they didn't know how to get into it. And they saw this group and they said, well, let's go and ask them some questions. And the group was very unfriendly and kind of brushing them off or whatever. And they posted a video about it on Instagram, and I saw it. And that broke my heart, because why? We're just trying to enjoy birds like everyone else. So what I ended up doing later on, I think a few months ago, as this couple, we communicated on Instagram, I took them out myself. And we went to this wildlife refuge, and they had their granddaughter with them, and we went out, and at sunrise we went to the refuge, and we stayed there till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we saw eagles, hawks, turtles, everything, snakes, everything, and that's all they wanted, So I just think it has to be a conscious effort to learn about the culture. If the people that you want to see there, you have to take the time to learn their history, learn about what their issues are, so you can be able to understand why they may not be coming out here, why they have a fear of coming out here, and then take that as a tool and then engage them. But like I said before, hey, how you doing? That opens up so many doors for folks without having to try to figure it out or overanalyze it. Just, hey, how you doing? Good day to you, and keep it moving if that's all you have. And that's what I think about how people can be more welcoming to other folks in this space.
Yeah, that's very well said, David. And I think like that word diversity, right? Like the diversity of wildlife is something that we're all trying to protect, right?
Right.
The diversity of the people that observe that wildlife, that's something we need to protect as well, right? And
absolutely
do a better job of. So I think that's very well said.
Absolutely. Thank you both. So as your final message, what would you want to put out there to encourage young people of color to get excited about heading out and enjoying nature in the ways that you both have?
Yeah, it can be magical. I think, a lot of people, my kids included, I have a 26-year-old and a 21-year-old, they're kind of grown, but they spend a lot of time in that phone, you know, heads down, you know, we're in the car, heads down. When I was in the car, we didn't have anything to look at, right? So we rolled the window down and tried to count how many hawks that we saw on the poles as we passed by, right? So I have a hashtag that I use that's hashtag look up. You know, we spend all of our lives nowadays like this. And occasionally you got to look up and observe the world around you and try to take in that beauty. And I think that's one of the things about young people now is their lack. And look, not all young people, I don't want to, you know, say that's not fair, but I do think there's a lack of patience. You know, a lack of being able to sort of sit down and watch a 2.5-hour David Attenborough documentary, right? Mm-hmm. But they've got 30 seconds to look at my post if it grabs them, right? If they see something that's really cool visually, they might read that post about that bird or that mammal that might, you know, strike something in them, right? So I think we only have little fragmented sections of time to get to people that are younger these days, right? So that's kind of what I try to do on my Instagram feed is not only think about people that are my age that, but also think about younger people and that diversity and trying to get them excited. And I think the diversity part is, you know, a young Black kid that might be on his phone, sees me taking pictures and he thinks, oh, I could do that, right? But it also might grab him in another way where it says like, I could go out and see that bird or I could go out into nature. And he might end up being a biologist like David, right? So yeah, you know, that's kind of how I try to approach it is just to do whatever I can to get their attention. And then from there, you know, I think it's up to them whether they love nature or not, right? Yeah. Can't force them out there, but you can do little things to maybe leave breadcrumbs so that they might follow you out there. Mm-hmm. That's kind of.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for me, my message to the young people would be step outside the box, you know, as you know, I think every culture has things they do and things they don't do. And, you know, from my experience in my culture, it's like, we don't spend time outside. Why are you going in the woods? You're going to get snatched. Or there's bugs out there. There's whatever. And so because of those boxes that may have been brought about generationally or just from experience, you know, they may not want to go outside or may not want to go to the park and things like that. So my message is think outside the box. Take a chance, get on Google Maps. So you got all this technology now, get on Google Maps and find a local park. You know what, I'm gonna go to this park today and just take a walk and see what I see. And if I don't like it, I won't have to come back. But showing up is such a huge part of life. You don't have to like everything, but expose yourself to it. Just show up. And, you know, my message is, and as I mentioned before through my photography, is like, I've gone out there and this is just not my total interest in life and animals. I love music, I do art, I do science, I do self-defense class, I do all of this stuff, but it's because I don't limit myself. So my message is, you know, if going outside is outside of your box, that's an easy way to get outside of your box. You might enjoy it, you may not, but then take that mentality to everything else in your life. You know, you may be somebody that, I don't know, likes to sew and you're a 200-pound guy, but you like to sew and make clothes. Do it. Like, get outside of the box. So I feel like nature is one of those things where it can provide you your next big idea. It can provide you with that therapy you need. It can provide you with just some peace and quiet that you may not have because you're looking at your phone all of the time. So yeah, just like Darren said, for me, it's being able to be an example and show people that this is another space that you can be in and that you can enjoy, and that we are out here and that we do enjoy it. I have a niece and nephew. I think they're 9 and 7, and everything that I try to do as a kid, I try to do with them when I see them. If I'm going outside, they say, "Uncle Dave, where you going?" I say, "I'm going to look for some frogs or something." They put their boots on and we go outside and we go look for some frogs, or they come with me and I say, oh, there's a hawk over there. And I take a picture of it and I show it to them. One of my fondest memories with them was 2 years ago. It was in June or July, fireflies were out. We're going to catch fireflies with Uncle Dave. This is what me and your mom used to do when we were kids, and you're going to do it too. We went outside, got the jars, and we caught fireflies for an hour or so. So I just think things like that, I think just exposing people and kids to things like that, I think that'll get them interested in nature. And really, if they see the parents doing it, then they'll be likely to do it too. Drag your kids to the park. Throw that phone in the trunk or whatever, and drag them to the park. And we're gonna do this whether you like it or not. And I think that's a way that we can get more children interested and more youth interested in being outside.
Very inspiring stuff. That's awesome. So I do have some Q&A questions, and I know we're coming up right here on 8 o'clock, but I would love to share these with you both. There's some awesome questions. I'm going to do rapid fire if you're ready.
All right.
So the first question is from Travis Smith, and he asks, what's your favorite animal to take pictures of and why?
Ooh, David, you better do that.
Yeah,
ready. I don't know. There's too many on my list.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Favorite animal to take photos of and why? Man, I would say foxes. Only because there's a few animals that have been the bane of my existence since I started, and foxes are one of them. And they have bad hours for me. It's sunrise or late.
Yeah.
And late, you don't have good light. So
really early.
Yeah, or they wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning screeching to the moon for whatever reason. But when I have gotten shots of them, it's always been like an amazing experience. It's just one of those things where you catch them when you catch them, and when you catch them, you really get a good shot. And I have a family of foxes in the back that I try to catch ever so often. I haven't really got a good shot of a kit yet, and that's what I've been wanting to do. But yeah, I would say foxes are my favorite because, especially when you get them in the fall and winter coat, and it's nice and plush and bushy, the bushy tail and everything is just beautiful. They just present a challenge to me, and I think that when I do get shots of foxes, it's like, man, it's like I made it all over again. Until the next time I want to get another shot, and they mess with me. But yeah, I would say foxes are my favorite.
Wow, you're lucky. I've yet to find a fox. Actually, I took a picture of a fox at Yellowstone, but I don't get to see foxes very often. So I think the one animal that I enjoyed photographing the most was the American badger. I saw an American badger in Point Reyes, and I didn't get a good picture. It was a cloudy day, and he was kind of grumpy, as they generally are. He didn't want to cooperate with me at all. But I went back a second time a couple weeks later with my wife and dragged her out there. And I said, he lives out here somewhere. I said, I'm going to find him. And we were walking around in this field for a half hour, 45 minutes. And sure enough, he showed up, and it was a nice sunny day. And he was still a little grouchy, but they're such characters, they're built low to the ground, and they're all about their business, like what he was doing. He had gophers to find, and he wasn't really bothered by me that much. As long as I wasn't too close, he was digging in his holes and all that. And because I don't see him very often, I think that was probably one of my favorite moments. That was a very memorable session.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So our next question is, I'll combine two questions here. So one is from Linda asking you to talk about your equipment, and this one is from Jerome asking Nikon or Canon. Why?
I don't want to get anybody upset out there.
Oh boy.
I'm a Canon guy myself.
Same here.
Yeah. I have a 90D, which is sort of the high end of the basic sort of Canon cameras. Is not quite professional quality, but it does the job for me. It's one of the newer Canons. It's probably a $1,500 camera. I use a 1:400 Canon zoom lens with some stabilization on it. And that does the trick. I wish I had a bigger lens. There are a lot of guys online that I follow that have 800mm lenses, and they get a lot closer, and they get, it's like gigantic, right? But, you know, you can only sort of do the best you can with the equipment that you have. And I'm pretty stealthy out there. So that's what I use. DSLR, 90D, 1 to 400 lens is sort of my general equipment. Dave?
Yeah, for me, also a Canon man. I shoot with the Canon 7D Mark II. And I got that because when I started doing this and I was looking to upgrade from my other Canon, which was a 60D, I needed something with a higher shutter speed to get those animals in motion, because as we know, they don't sit still for you if they don't want to. So I shoot with that because of the high shutter speed. I have a Sigma 150 to 600mm lens that I use pretty much all the time. That's my go-to lens. Unless I'm doing macro photography, which, you know, I'll be looking at insects or, you know, butterflies or, you know, things like that. Now I have a 100mm Canon macro lens, but for the most part, I shoot with the 150 to 600. And yeah, I mean, it's been working good for me so far. I know a lot of mirrorless cameras have just come out from Canon that I hear are amazing. A mirrorless, you don't have that shutter sound, so you're even more stealthy with that. And you know, the frame rates and the image stabilization is top notch. And for me, the autofocus, a lot of them have the autofocus that focuses in on your subject's eye, which is what I aim for a lot of the times when I'm getting shots, is try to get the animal's eye. So, you know, if the money comes, then I'll go to mirrorless, but I'm fine with what I have right now. If anybody out there wants to, you know, hook me and Darren up with a mirrorless Canon, you know, we're open for it.
Yeah.
We'll bring you better shots with better equipment.
Mirrorless is the next step. Mirrorless.
Yeah, I just throw that out there. But yeah, that's what I'm using.
Awesome. This next question is for David. If you offer any like classes or adventures in the DC, Maryland area.
All right. So I will say in September of this year, I've been working with this botanical garden called Mount Cuba in Hocassin, Delaware. And I'm slated to teach a basic or beginners wildlife photography class there. I'm not sure if I think it's up on their website now, but I'm preparing for that now. So that's kind of my first, well, not really my first foray, but my first like major foray into doing teaching wildlife photography. I've done some smaller things with some high school kids in the past, back in 2017. And actually this month, I got a partnership with a wonderful woman out in Lancaster County. She owns a kayak company. So she reached out to me and said that she enjoyed my photography. She really believes in my mission of reconnecting people of color to nature. And we are going to have my first Nature Under Your Nose nature kayaking tour on June 18th. I'm taking 6 of my closest friends out for the first time with me. A lot of times I'll kayaking and I'll go on Instagram Live and live stream where I am and the kayaking thing. But for people to be out there with me in person is something new. So if, you know, weather permits and the cicadas are gone, we are looking to do that on June 18th. And if it goes well, this is something I think I'll do more of. I definitely want to get down to DC and Maryland more. I haven't been on the water out there that often, but yeah, I'm definitely looking at doing more nature walks and things like that. It's just the time and just trying to figure it out how to get it done logistically. But you know, if I'm in the area and Maryland or DC, you know, I visit my parents from time to time, and you know, you want to go out, or I let people know that I'm down there, then you definitely could go on a nature walk or hike or whatever, or you know. But yeah, I'm starting to do more of that stuff now. You know, kind of giving people that nature under your nose experience. So we'll see more of that hopefully soon.
Very cool. Next question is from Jason Hall, AKA the Birding Beardsman. And he asked, when are you two going to get together and bless us with some collaborations?
Yeah, we've been talking about that. It's just getting the logistics down. Like I told Darren I got to get out to the West Coast because he makes me feel bad sometimes when I see he's going to places that have elephant seals and bobcats and all the West Coast animals that I don't have over here. So it's definitely something that we talked about, and I think we have to keep talking about it and logistically.
Maybe we can meet in the middle.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of places in the middle that I haven't been to, so we'll figure it out. We're gonna sort it out, but we definitely need to team up at some point. We talked about it, but COVID has made that kind of tricky. So as soon as we get through that, I'm sure we'll do a collab.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. This question is from, we have 3 more. So this question is from Debbie McKevitt. She was asking if you have ever received feedback, or maybe, and this just sounds like a great idea, that maybe one of you joining a field trip kind of as like being a diverse like participant, maybe through like Audubon or something like that, to maybe make people feel more safe or get excited about like outdoor programming.
Definitely open to that. I know a couple of schools have reached out to me, but because of COVID, that didn't work out. So hopefully I'm going to be able to take some kids out at some point and do some field trips, teach them about photography and nature. So that's certainly something that I've thought about and that I would love to do, whether it be with kids or adults.
Yeah,
that's certainly on my radar.
Yeah, I've through my job, like I've been at my job for like going on 19 years now. And one of the things that has always been a mainstay for me that I love doing, that I'm passionate about, is outreach to youth and young people. And I've done a lot of that in terms of educating youth about environmental science and the environment. And so through that, I've been able over the last couple of years to do some programming with a local college prep program called Teen Sharp in Wilmington, Delaware. And it's a group of I think it's mostly Black and Latino kids. And we've gone out to the wildlife refuge, and I've led a nature walk with another friend of mine. So we've done that, and it was a great experience for them, because again, they're seeing somebody that looks like them is kind of leading this nature walk or whatever. And for them, a lot of them, when we're having a discussion, I ask them, have you ever seen anybody that looks like me that does this type of photography? And the answer is always no. So I feel like that was groundbreaking for myself and for them. And so I have been doing that. Again, COVID kind of put a wrench in a lot of those types of activities. But it's something that I do enjoy doing. So I have done that. I'm trying to think. But I'm definitely open to it. Like Darren said, I'm open to it. I think the goal the goal of it would be to lead these tours, but ensure that the tours are inclusive, because if I'm just leading people who are already out there doing it anyway, it just like, am I just making them feel comfortable with me as a Black man, or do you want a more diverse group for me to lead along with who you typically do business with? So I think that's the only concern of mine, is that I just want to make sure that whatever I do, whether it's teaching a class or doing a nature tour, that it's inclusive of other people, and that it's a diverse group as well. Because all right, I'm a friendly Black guy, but that doesn't help anybody if I don't have people there that look like me or other folks of color. So yeah, but I'm interested in doing it.
Cool. This one is, what animal haven't you photographed yet that is on your list that you would like to?
I'll let Darren go first, because I have a lot on my list.
I have one on my list. I just have one. I have yet to find and photograph a great gray owl. And that to me is sort of the holy grail of owls anyway. I know a guy online that I follow who seems to find them regularly, and it really annoys me. But they're just such a beautiful, giant, big bird, and I've seen pictures of them for ages. And apparently, there are some in the Sierra Nevadas near where I live. An hour and a half drive. But to find one, I think you have to be very lucky, or you have to know somebody that kind of knows where they live. And I don't know anybody like that. But I'm constantly searching, and I will find one, and I will take a picture of one if it kills me.
Yeah,
absolutely. I said, great outcome.
So I have a lot, but I will pick one. This is a shot that I've been, so I kind of, what they say, visualize shots that I want. And one of them is a shot of a male moose, full rack. And I'm in the kayak, and he's emerging from the water with all the moss and the greenery hanging from his antlers, and he's eating, and I'm there, and I'm getting that shot, nice wide shot of the full rack and the water drip. I've imagined this. You can see the detail in what I'm saying. So that for me, like I said, I have others, but that for me would be like the holy grail of a moose emerging from the water, eating with all of the tapestries coming down from the rack. That would be my shot.
Yeah, I want to see that. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds amazing. I hope you can make that a reality.
Yeah,
That'd be awesome. All right, so this is our final Q&A question. This one is from Gwen Blatt, and they asked, do you have any tips for an amateur photographer on how to learn how to use the manual settings on a camera, or the benefits of that versus just a normal point and shoot camera?
Yeah, I think David and I were talking about this not too long ago. Like, there's a lady at the camera shop that I see regularly, and she follows me on Instagram, and she loves my photos. But her two critiques are, you have to get a mirrorless camera. You need to upgrade, Darren. And that I need to start shooting more on manual. And I keep trying to explain to her, she does beautiful photography herself, but she doesn't take pictures of animals, right? And when you're taking pictures of wildlife, if you're shooting on manual, you have to make some quick decisions about the lighting, the subject, because it's not a model shoot, right? You're in nature. So you only have moments, right? If you're lucky, seconds to adjust your settings and take a picture. So generally, I keep my setting on TV mode, which allows me to adjust the shutter speed, but it takes care of the ISO and some of the other issues. And for that reason, probably 80 to 90% of my pictures are taken in that mode rather than in manual. And I think with manual, you have to have a subject that you know is going to be there for a while. And if you know that and you're not moving quickly and you have an opportunity, then you can switch to manual and work on that. But again, for wildlife, not always the best setting to be on manual. David?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think, everything Darren said is, in my opinion, is correct. I haven't touched manual on my camera probably ever. When I was doing videography, everything was manual because I was using a cinema camera. So I focused manually. I changed my aperture manually, whatever. But for this stuff, I have used the TV mode that Darren uses, but for me, like, that works best when you have optimal lighting. I shoot in aperture priority mode, which I think is AV, which it's set to auto ISO. It automatically kind of adjusts the shot for the lighting that you have, and you get a pretty high shutter speed with that too. Pretty much 98% of my shots that you see are shot in AV mode for me. Only a few, like if I'm doing I have a hummingbird shot that I don't know, the shutter speed was on like 5,000 or something, and I got the bird with its wings like this. But that was probably the only time that I've used TV mode, just because if you don't have optimal lighting, the shots tend to come out a little darker. But aperture priority is what I use, because like you really don't have time to adjust your settings for shutter speed, for lighting, for aperture, for, whatever. You just don't have time most of the time with you're dealing with something that's going to be gone that quick, especially if it sees you and it's like, oh, I'm out of here. You can't be fiddling
Fumbling around.
Yeah. Oh, let me, you don't have time for that. So I would say, and it depends on what you're using. Like Nikon and Canon have similar settings. They're just called something different. I'm not sure what aperture priority is on Nikon or what TV mode is on Nikon or shutter priority mode or whatever. But I think for, just to start out, even if you have a cell phone, the cameras on cell phones are great. And I'm not saying in terms of the zoom, because the zooms are only going to get you but so much, but in terms of practicing composition, getting closer to your subjects. Like when I started Nature Under Your Nose, I legitimately was finding nature in the backyard. Like that's where I started. I set up a bird feeder and the birds would come and sit on the branches or sit on the shepherd hook. And I just sit back and take shots and just experiment with composition. And when I'm editing, am I going to crop this way or that way? I learned at home. I go to my parents' house a lot and I would shoot around my parents' house in the backyard and just go through the woods and take photos of stuff around the house. And that's how I started. I've got shots that were taken in my mom's garden. You wouldn't know that's where it was because of the way I edited the photo. So you can, whatever tool you have, I would say learn that tool the best that you can and maximize it, because it's going to, like, whatever limitations you have is going to force creativity for you to get the shot that you want to get. And then when you get better equipment, that won't be a limitation, but there'll be something else that you can improve on as you get better equipment. But I would say showing up is a huge part of the battle. Is going out and
putting in the time
and exploring.
Yeah.
And just practicing, like, and don't put pressure on yourself to get the greatest shot of all time. Like, just go and enjoy it. There's times where like I miss shots, but I still look at whatever it was that flew away because it's still, I'm doing it because I love nature, not because I'm trying to win a photo contest or whatever the case may be. So take the pressure off yourself, just enjoy it, work with what you have, and as you get more into it, just get out there. So yeah.
So, well, thank you both so much. Those are awesome answers and honestly really inspiring to hear you guys talk about your experience. And thanks so much.
Thank you. Follow me at blackbirdman_. David.
And follow me at Nature Under Your Nose. And for prints, D Greaves at pickfair.com.
There you go. Yeah, if you want to type, I typed the Instagram handles on the chat, but if you want to share that that website, feel free to post that in the chat below. For anyone interested in some upcoming programs for Hawk Mountain, we are continuing our Blackbirders Week celebration on Saturday, June 5th, this weekend from 10 to 11:30. We have a Nature is for Everyone Everywhere program led by Mr. Thomas Kroger, who is a retired school principal and former board member of the John Hines Wildlife Refuge in Philly that I know you were talking about before, David. Yep. So that one is in person. We'll be hiking up to our south lookout here at Hawk Mountain. So definitely check that out if you are local. And for any educators out there, we do have free educator workshops. We're in the middle of a series right now, and our next one is next Wednesday, June 9th from 4 to 5. And it is a behind the scenes at Shavers Creek Environmental Center in Penn State. And that is hosted by the Animal Care Program Director, James Beal. Also, if anyone else is local, Saturday, June 12th from 2 to 3:30, you can join us in our outdoor amphitheater. We have music on the mountain with the Berks Sinfonietta. So exciting stuff. Thank you so much, Darren and David, for joining us today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Hawk Mountain. Thank you, everybody that watched. Appreciate you guys.
Absolutely. Same. Thank you.
Thanks so much and have a great night, everybody.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.